my sister attacked me physically for standing up to her. 6 years later, she showed up at my bachelorette party uninvited. But what she did left me speechless and changed everything forever. I'm 28 years old, getting married in 3 months. And honestly, I never thought I'd reach this happy moment in my life without my sister by my side. But well, life surprises you in ways you don't expect. The thing is that Courtney and I didn't speak for 6 complete years. Not a word, not a text message, nothing. And everything exploded in the most dramatic way possible at my bridal shower about 2 months ago. But for you to really understand why everything got so ugly, I need to tell you what our relationship was like since we were girls, because this goes way further back. Look, my parents, Michelle and Gregory, basically raised us like we were competitors on a reality show instead of sisters. You know, everything was a constant competition. Like who got better grades, who was prettier, who had more friends, who was better at sports, literally everything. And the worst part is that they did it on purpose. I mean, they'd sit at the table and say things like, "Oh, Alexandra got a 9 in math, but Courtney got a 10. Or Courtney has 3 boys chasing her, but Alexandra only has 1. It was exhausting, honestly. And looking back, I should have seen this wasn't going to end well. When I say they pit us against each other from a young age, I'm not exaggerating. I remember being like 7 years old and already feeling like I had to be better than my sister at everything for my parents to love me more. Now that I think about it, it's super twisted. But at the time, it seemed normal because it was all we knew. Courtney is 2 years younger than me, so when I was 15, she was 13. And at that time, the competition got worse because we were already teenagers and everything was more intense. She was more extroverted than me, more the popular type at school, and my parents constantly held her up as an example of how I should be socially. But I was a better student, so I clung to that. Like it's the only thing where I can win, so I'm going to be the best. I don't know if I'm explaining myself, but basically neither of us could just exist without constantly comparing ourselves to the other. And the sad thing is that when we were really little, before my parents started with this craziness, Courtney and I were close. Or at least I think I remember that. But by the time we got to adolescence, we already hated each other most of the time. Fast forward to like 6.5 years ago. I was 22 and Courtney was 20. I had just met Nicholas, my now fiancé. We'd been dating for about 4 months, and things were going amazing, like I'd never felt so happy with someone. Nicholas is super calm, super respectful, works in engineering, and basically is the most decent man I've ever met in my life. I decided it was time to introduce him to my family. And, you know, I was nervous but also excited because I felt like this was something serious. We organized a dinner at my parents' house. Nothing fancy, just a normal Friday night dinner. Nicholas arrived, with flowers for my mom, was super polite to my dad. Everything was going well at first, but then Courtney started with her little act. I don't know how to describe it exactly, but basically she went into full seduction mode with my boyfriend, and it wasn't something subtle. It was obvious and deliberate, and everyone at that table could see it. She sat next to him even though there were other seats available. Laughed way too loud at anything he said. Touched his arm every 5 seconds. Leaned toward him in a way that, well, you know. And the worst part is that my parents didn't say anything. Absolutely nothing. They just sat there watching the whole show like it was entertainment for them. Nicholas was super uncomfortable. Poor guy. He tried to move a little closer to me every time Courtney got close, but she didn't take the hint. Or rather, she didn't want to take it. I tried to stay calm during dinner. Honestly, I tried to be the mature person and not make a scene, but after the hour of watching my sister practically throw herself at my boyfriend, I couldn't take it anymore. When we went to the kitchen to serve dessert, Courtney followed me and started making comments like, "Oh, your boyfriend is so cute. You're lucky. I don't know how you got him being you." And something in me broke, I guess, because I said, "You know what, Courtney? You're a loser. A complete loser who has nothing better to do than try to steal her sister's boyfriend because your own life is so pathetic you need to ruin mine to feel better about yourself." I said it loud. Louder than I intended. And yes, it was cruel. I admit it. But in that moment, I felt it was true. And then Courtney literally attacked me. I'm not exaggerating or dramatizing. She grabbed my hair with both hands and started pulling so hard I felt like she was going to rip out whole chunks. And then she slapped me with so much force that the red mark stayed for hours. I was in shock. Completely in shock. Because yes, we had fought. Before as kids, silly pushing and stuff like that. But this was different. This was real violence between adults. Nicholas heard the commotion and came running, separated me from her, and I could only stand there trembling and crying from the shock and adrenaline. And you know what my parents did when they came out to see what happened? My dad said, "Well, Alexandra, you shouldn't have provoked her." And my mom said, "You both need to calm down and behave like adults." Not an apology from Courtney, not a scolding from my parents toward her, nothing. Nicholas and I left there immediately. I remember the ride back to my apartment, him driving in silence while I cried in the passenger seat. And when we got there, he told me, "You don't have to see them again if you don't want to. I support you in whatever you decide." And that was exactly what I did. I made the decision that very night to cut contact with Courtney completely, and since my parents were clearly on her side, I also limited contact with them a lot. During the next 6 years, I saw my parents maybe 3 or 4 times a year, on occasions I couldn't avoid, like Christmas or my grandmother's birthday, but I always made sure Courtney wasn't there. And if she was, I left. I didn't answer a single one of her messages, blocked her number, blocked her on all social media, basically erased her from my life. The truth is, those 6 years were difficult but also liberating. You know what I mean? For the first time in my life, I wasn't constantly comparing myself to someone. I didn't have that toxic energy around. Nicholas and I built a beautiful life together. We moved to a better apartment. I got a promotion at my job. He did too. We adopted a cat. We made friends who didn't know the whole dramatic story of my family. It was like starting over. My parents called me from time to time trying to get me to fix things with Courtney, but I simply told them no, that I wasn't going to forgive what happened until she gave me a real apology, and that apology never came. Sometimes they'd send me messages telling me things about her, like she'd lost her job or broken up with her boyfriend, and honestly, I didn't care. I mean, it sounds cold, but it's the truth. So Nicholas proposed to me like 8 months ago, and obviously I said yes because I love him, and because after 6 years together, it was the natural next step. We started planning the wedding. Nothing too big or elaborate, like 150 guests more or less, and from the beginning I made it clear that Courtney wasn't invited. My parents knew it, Nicholas knew it, everyone knew it. My mom tried to convince me several times to invite her. She'd say things like, "She's your only sister. You'll both regret it if she's not at your wedding. Family is the most important thing. Blah, blah, blah." But I stood firm. Like, no? She physically attacked me and never apologized. She's not going to be at my special day, period. My best friend, who is my maid of honor, organized my bridal shower 2 months ago. It was at a really nice event hall. Nothing too crazy, like 30 women between friends, cousins, aunts, co-workers, all the important people in my life. I gave my friend a very specific list of who to invite and who not to, and Courtney obviously wasn't on that list. My parents were invited because, well, they're my parents. And even though our relationship was tense, I thought they could behave like adults for one day. Everything was going perfect. We were playing silly games, eating snacks, drinking champagne, opening gifts. I was genuinely happy, surrounded by all these women who love and support me. And then my parents arrive, like 40 minutes late, and Courtney comes with them. They brought her without telling me, without asking me, without warning my friend who organized it. They just brought her like it was nothing. When I saw them come in together, I felt like someone had thrown ice water on me. My whole body tensed up, and I felt like my heart was going to explode out of my chest. I approached them and said quietly, "What is she doing here?" And my mom said in that sweet fake voice she uses when she wants to manipulate you, "Oh, honey, she's your sister. We thought it would be a good opportunity for you to reconcile. Isn't it exciting?" And my dad added, "It's been 6 years, Alexandra. Get over it. It's time for you to act like an adult." Courtney was standing there, not saying anything, just looking at me with an expression I couldn't decipher, like between defiant and ashamed. All my guests were watching, obviously, because the atmosphere got super tense suddenly and everyone could feel something was wrong. And I had to make a decision in that moment. You know what I mean? I could get them out discreetly and deal with this privately, or I could confront the situation right there in front of everyone. And I chose the second option. Maybe it wasn't the most mature thing, but honestly, I didn't care. I stood in the middle of the room and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Since we're all here, let me tell you why Courtney wasn't invited to this event or to my wedding. 6 years ago, When I introduced Nicholas to my family, she spent the whole dinner flirting with him shamelessly, and when I confronted her about it, she physically attacked me, pulled my hair and slapped my face, and neither she nor my parents thought I deserved an apology. So that's the reason we haven't talked in 6 years, because I refused to maintain a relationship with someone who was violent toward me and never showed even a bit of remorse. And now my parents thought it would be a good idea to bring her to my bridal shower without my permission, as if the last 6 years hadn't happened. The silence after I finished speaking was deafening. Literally no one knew where to put themselves. Some of my friends already knew part of the story, but not all the details, and those who didn't know anything were in total shock. Courtney turned completely red. My parents looked furious, and I was trembling but also felt a strange kind of satisfaction from finally telling the truth publicly. My Aunt Eleanor, who is my dad's sister and who I've always had a good relationship with, came up to me and hugged me, and then looked at Courtney and my parents and told them, "I think you should leave. Clearly you're not welcome here." And they left, all three of them, without saying anything else. They just turned around and walked out of the hall. After they left, I tried to continue with the party, but the atmosphere was already ruined. Everyone felt uncomfortable and weird, and even though my friends tried to cheer me up and distract me, I just wanted it all to end and go home. We finished like an hour later, much earlier than planned. Nicholas picked me up, and on the way home, I told him everything that had happened, and he was furious. Like more furious than I'd seen him in years. But he also told me I'd done the right thing by not letting them disrespect me that way. That night, I cried a lot. Not so much about Courtney, but about my parents. Because it hurt to realize that after all this time, they were still prioritizing their own ideas about what family should be, instead of respecting my boundaries and my pain. 2 days later, my Aunt Eleanor called me and told me something I didn't expect at all. Turns out that, and I didn't know this, Eleanor had offered Courtney a job at her marketing company about a month before my bridal shower. Eleanor knew that Courtney was unemployed and basically in financial ruin, still living with my parents at 26 years old, and since she's family, she decided to give her a chance. But after what happened at my party, and after hearing the complete story of what Courtney had done to me 6 years earlier, Eleanor withdrew the job offer. She told me, "I can't hire someone who not only was violent with a family member, but also didn't have the decency to apologize in 6 years. That speaks very poorly of her character. And Alexandra, I'm not going to reward that behavior even if she's my niece." Honestly, I didn't know how to feel about it. On one hand, I felt vindicated. You know, like someone was finally seeing things from my perspective and recognizing that what Courtney did was wrong. But on the other hand, I felt a twinge of guilt. Like, did I just ruin my sister's life? But then I reminded myself that I didn't ruin anything. She ruined her own opportunity by refusing to take responsibility for her actions for 6 complete years. 2 hours after Eleanor called me, my mom called me screaming hysterically on the phone. She was saying that I had deliberately destroyed Courtney's opportunities, that I had taken the job away from her on purpose, that I was a vindictive and horrible person, and that she would never forgive me for ruining my sister's life. I tried to explain to her that I didn't ask Eleanor to withdraw the offer, that it was her decision, based on Courtney's character. But my mom didn't want to listen. My dad also sent me like 10 text messages, calling me selfish, dramatic, and saying I was being completely unreasonable for not forgiving something that happened so long ago. And I was so fed up, so tired of this whole situation, that I blocked them both. On the phone, on social media, on email, everywhere. Nicholas completely supported me, told me I'd tolerated their toxicity for too long, and that he was proud of me for finally setting firm boundaries. About 2 weeks later, on a Saturday morning, we were having a quiet breakfast when someone knocked on the door. Nicholas went to open it and came back with a weird expression, like worried but also confused, and he told me, "It's your parents and your sister. They're outside and want to talk to you." I didn't want to see them, honestly. But Nicholas said, "Maybe you should hear what they have to say. And if you don't like it, you can ask them to leave." So I went out, with Nicholas at my side, obviously, because I wasn't going to face this alone. My parents were standing there with their arms crossed, looking annoyed and, as always, blaming me with their looks. But Courtney looked different. She looked small, I guess, like vulnerable in a way I hadn't seen in her in years. And before my parents could say anything, Courtney started talking. She said, "Alexandra, I came to really apologize. Not because Mom and Dad forced me to, although they tried, but because I finally understand how horrible I was to you. I spent the last 6 years blaming you for cutting contact, telling myself that you had overreacted and that you were the problem. But after what happened at your bridal shower, and after losing the job opportunity with Aunt Eleanor, I finally had to face the truth that I was the one who ruined everything. I shouldn't have flirted with your boyfriend. That was wrong on so many levels, and I definitely shouldn't have attacked you physically. There's no excuse for what I did. None. And I'm sorry. I'm really, truly sorry. And I completely understand if you can never forgive me. She was crying while saying all this, real tears running down her face, and I also started crying because after 6 years, this was the only thing I had wanted to hear. My parents looked super uncomfortable, like they didn't know what to do with this display of real vulnerability, but I completely ignored them and just focused on Courtney. I asked her, "Do you really mean it?" And she said, "Yes, I've been a terrible person, and I've let mom and dad turn me into someone who competes with her sister instead of loving her, and I regret every second of it. I lost 6 years of knowing the person you became. I lost the chance to be in your life, and it was completely my fault. I don't know what happened to me in that moment. Maybe it was the relief of finally hearing a real apology. Maybe it was seeing my sister being genuinely vulnerable for the first time in her life, or maybe I was just tired of carrying all this resentment. But I hugged her tight, and we both stood there crying in the hallway outside my apartment while my parents watched us not knowing what to say. After what seemed like hours but was probably just minutes, I pulled back a little and told her, "You're invited to the wedding. If you want to come, I'd like you to be there." Courtney said yes, she wanted to go, and then we spent like 2 hours talking. Just the two of us. Nicholas stayed inside, giving us space, and my parents left after like half an hour because obviously they were upset that the reconciliation didn't include them. Courtney told me about her life in the last 6 years, how basically everything had gone wrong for her. Several jobs lost, relationships that didn't work out, depression she wasn't treating, and how she'd finally started therapy like 3 months ago. She said her therapist had helped her see how the dynamic our parents created had damaged both of us, and how she had perpetuated that toxicity instead of breaking the cycle. I also shared my side. I told her about my career, about the life Nicholas and I had built, about how happy I'd been without all that constant competition. And I told her something I think we both needed to hear. I told her, "I can't change the past, and it's still going to take me time to trust you completely, but I'm willing to try if you are too." She agreed. And we decided to start fresh, take things slowly, and see what happened. We exchanged numbers again, decided to meet for coffee the following week, and when she left that day, I felt like a giant weight had been lifted off me. But obviously the story doesn't end there because my parents weren't going to leave things that easy. About 3 days later, I received an email from them. A long, dramatic email where basically they said that if Courtney was invited to the wedding, but they weren't welcome unless I apologized for embarrassing them publicly and for ruining Courtney's opportunities, then they weren't going to go. They added a bunch of stuff about how we were both ungrateful daughters, how we'd destroyed the family, and how it was our responsibility to fix everything because they hadn't done anything wrong. It was so absurd, so completely lacking in self-awareness, that I actually laughed when I read it. I didn't respond to them. I simply didn't respond. And when I talked to Courtney about it, she told me they had sent her a similar email and that she hadn't responded to them either. She said that in therapy, she was working on establishing boundaries with them and that she'd decided she needed distance from our parents to really heal. It was comforting to know we were both on the same page about this, that we could finally be allies instead of enemies. The wedding was 3 weeks ago. It was beautiful, perfect, exactly what Nicholas and I wanted. Courtney was there, not as part of the wedding party, because that would have been weird given we were just reconnecting, but she was in the audience, and that meant everything to me. During the dance after the ceremony, we took a picture together, just the two of us, genuinely smiling, and when I looked at it later, I thought, this is what it should have always been. Two sisters who support each other instead of competing. My parents didn't come, obviously, and honestly, I didn't even miss them, which maybe sounds sad, but it's the truth. Now Courtney and I see each other about once a week. We have coffee or lunch, and slowly we're rebuilding a relationship we never really had. It's weird and wonderful at the same time. Like we're getting to know each other as the people we are now instead of the girls our parents forced us to be. She's still in therapy. I also started going because I realized I have my own work to do, and we're both learning to break the toxic patterns we were taught. She got a new job 2 weeks ago at a different company, Nothing related to family, and she's really excited about it. As for my parents, I haven't talked to them since before the wedding, and honestly, I have no plans to do so soon. Maybe eventually we can have some kind of relationship, but it would have to be on my terms and with very clear boundaries, and they would have to do serious work acknowledging the damage they caused. I'm not holding my breath for that to happen, honestly, but I'm also not completely closed to the possibility. For now, I'm focused on my marriage, on rebuilding the relationship with my sister, and on living my life without all that toxicity I carried for so many years. Sometimes I wonder how things would have been if my parents had raised us differently, if they had taught us to be allies instead of competitors. But I guess there's no point thinking about that because I can't change the past. I can only decide how my future continues. And my future includes my sister. Not the sister who was violent and competitive, but the sister who's working on being better, who apologized for real, who's making the effort. That's enough for now, I think.